Ukrainian troops have retreated from Avdiivka, ending a grueling 2-year battle with Russian forces. The Ukrainians admitted it, the Russians confirmed it, and now analysts are pondering whether this marks a significant turning point in the war. We will get to that a bit later, but for now, let's have a look at why Ukraine withdrew. Well, when you look at a map, it's not hard to see why. Avdiivka, which sits in the industrial Donbas region, used to be a town of 30,000 people. Russian forces were advancing in a pincer movement around the town, encircling the armed forces of Ukraine. If Ukraine had not retreated, Russia would have completely cut off AFU battalions from the rest of its army and supply lines. So it had no choice but to avoid another meat grinder, like the Battle of Bakhmut or Kherson, which took up a lot of lives, time, and ammunition. This grueling war of attrition that is usually focused on one front rather than multiple fronts has scuppered Ukraine's chances of achieving some battlefield victories, like its long-hyped but failed 2023 summer counteroffensive. All this is even more disastrous when you remember that Ukraine has far more limited manpower than Russia does. After all, Ukraine's pre-war population stood at over 40 million, compared to Russia's, which was and is more than 3 times higher. That's why Kiev has been cracking down on those evading conscription and has been attempting to attract younger, fitter recruits. The Avdiivka pullout may also have had something to do with Ukraine's recent military shakeup. In early February 2024, President Volodymyr Zelensky replaced Army Chief General Valery Zaluzhny with General Alexander Syrsky. Syrsky had earned the moniker Hero of Ukraine in the early days of the war, owing to his successful defense of Kiev. It seems General Syrsky may have learned his lesson in Bakhmut, the battle which he oversaw. That operation was unsuccessful as it bogged AFU down in the little town with no strategic value. The battle's key purpose appeared to be to mire the Russians in a meat grinder, eroding their manpower, motivation, and resources. But the Ukrainians also lost a lot in the process. So what now? Where does this leave the Ukraine-Russia conflict? For starters, Russia's conquest of Avdiivka marks its biggest victory since Bakhmut. Russia now controls around 18% of Ukrainian territory. The mood among Western nations is currently a far cry from a year ago, when there was a lot of optimism and hype over Ukraine's summer offensive. NATO officials have now acknowledged that they were overly optimistic about the war in 2023. With a depleting ammunition stockpile, lower public morale, and challenges in mobilizing troops, 2024 seems poised to be especially tough for Ukraine. Kiev's goal for the year will now involve hunkering down to build and consolidate defensive positions, basically switching gears from an offensive posture to a defensive one. But Ukraine's shortage of shells and missiles will make defending what it holds challenging. That's why Kiev is hedging its bets on more Western funding. But the prospect of less aid and weapons in the event that Donald Trump is re-elected as US president poses a significant existential threat to Ukraine's war efforts. As mentioned before in a previous video, Ukrainian success on the battlefield will require sustained Western support. A recent $60 billion aid package from the West may help Kiev turn the tide, but that support needs to keep flowing in to keep Ukraine's military afloat. And one should wonder, how much difference do these game-changing Western weapons really make? They're only as good as those operating them, oftentimes maneuvered by green and inexperienced personnel. A lot hangs in the balance as Ukraine enters its 3rd year on the battlefield. No longer buoyed by the optimism present in the first couple of years of the war, Ukrainians are now worn out and reality is setting in. With the potential Trump presidency on the horizon, one can only speculate as to what's in store for embattled, exhausted Ukraine.